Hi friends, I'm Yakuta Karkhanawala. So today we'll see the next topic of function, that is what is actual arguments and what are formal arguments in our functions. So we have two definitions here and let's understand the meaning of these two topics, what that is actual and the formal arguments. Now the first one is actual arguments. The arguments which we are mentioning during the function call is known as actual arguments. It means that whenever we are doing function call and inside during the calling of the function, if you are passing any arguments, and that is known as actual arguments. Let's understand this with an example. That is, I'm doing a function call. The name of the function is function1. In bracket, I'm passing the two values. One is 12 and another is 23. So this is a function call. So in this case, the arguments that is 12 and 23 are known as actual arguments because I mentioned this values during my function call. Now actual arguments can be a constant, that is a value as we have mentioned above, or these values can be stored in a variable also, or it can be a mathematical expression. So you can choose any of this one option for passing actual arguments in a function. You can see one example here where is function 1 bracket a comma b, means I'm passing actual arguments as variable. If you want to pass actual arguments as expression, then how you are going to do this is function 1 bracket a plus b comma b plus a, means there are two mathematical expression. One is a plus b, another is b plus a. So whatever the result of addition is there, that value is passed to the function 1. So normally this is a basic layout of a program. We include some header files. Then this is my function definition. Return, type the name of the function, in bracket there are arguments and the braces, the block of the function, the starting and the ending braces. Then we have the main, integer main, and within this main I am calling the function name with some argument value. The arguments which you mention during function call is known as actual arguments, and the arguments which you mention during the definition of the function is known as formal arguments. So the formal arguments are the arguments mentioned during the definition of the functions. Formal arguments are, you can say they are considered as a local variable. Means it can be used only within the function and it cannot be used outside the function. Just like local variables, formal arguments are destroyed when the function ends. So here you can see an example. Integer is a return type. Then the factorial is the name of the function. In bracket, I am passing an argument integer a and the block of the function factorial. Here, the argument I mentioned during my definition is n, which is of integer data type. So n is known as a formal argument of the function. Whenever you are working with actual and the formal arguments, you should remember three important things: that the order of the argument should be same, the total number of arguments should also be the same, and the data type should be same. What do we understand by this is, say for example, I have a function void add, the return type is void, there are two arguments integer a comma integer b. Means there are total how many number of arguments? 2, and both are of integer data type. So in this case, so whenever you call this particular function add bracket 2.5 comma 3.5, means here when I'm calling the function add, I'm passing float values. So the data type is different. This will give me an error because add functions require an integer value. Okay, so whenever you are working with actual and the formal arguments, you need to remember some few important points. That is the order, the number and the type of the actual and the formal argument should exactly match. If there is any error in any of these three things, then you will get an error by the compiler. Now let's understand what it means. Say I have a function void add, in bracket I am passing two integer arguments. This is my definition of the function. Right now I have omitted the logic of the program. Simply I concentrate on the signature of the function. If you are calling this function as add 2.5 comma 3.5, means when I am calling the function I am passing the float value. But what is actually required by the definition of the function is both should be an integer value. So this will give me an error. Means there is a data type mismatch between the formal and the actual arguments. 2.5 and 3.5 is my actual arguments. A and B is my formal argument. So this will result in an error. Another example is I have a function add in which I am passing the first argument as float and the second argument as integer. So if I call this function as add bracket 2 comma 3.5. So when I'm calling the function in that case, if I'm passing the first as integer and the second one is float, this will again give me an error because my order is incorrect. In the definition, it is expected that the first one should be float and the second should be an integer. But when I'm calling the function, I'm passing first as integer and second as float. There's a mismatch in the order of arguments between the formal and the actual argument. So this is again going to result in an error. And the next one is I have a function in which I'm passing three arguments, integer a, comma integer b, comma integer c. But when you will call this function as add 2 comma 3 means I'm only passing two arguments as my actual arguments. But what is expected is in formal arguments there are three, integer a, b and c. But during calling I'm only passing two arguments. It means that the number of arguments again having mismatch. That is the number of arguments are wrong. So this is also result in an error. So this is the meaning of that the order, the number and the type of both the arguments actual and formal should exactly match. Otherwise you will get some error by the compiler. Also remember this, that whenever you do any changes in the formal argument in a particular function, it is not going to affect your actual argument at all because your formal arguments are your local variables. Let's understand this with a small program of actual and a formal argument. In main, I have a variable x whose value is 10. Before function call, a printf statement, and I'm displaying the value of x. So that is 10 would be displayed onto the screen. Now I'm calling the function 1 in which I'm passing the actual argument x, right? So it will go to the definition part. The value of x is stored in a. Now a is incremented, a plus equal to 1. So now 10 will become 11. Again I'm performing the addition using increment operator. So the value of a will become 12. And when you display the value of a inside the function, I'll get the output as 12. After executing all the lines of this function, my control will go to the next line of the function call. So I'll have after function call would be displayed and then I'm displaying the value of x. So here the value of x is equal to 10. The value of a has not changed the value of x. So that was the meaning of the sentence, that the changes made in the formal argument does not affect the actual argument. So though we have changed the value of a inside the function, the value of x would remain as it. So this was all about the actual and the formal arguments in a function. That's all for today. Goodbye. Thank you.